You run down on your feature event, 25 laps. On the pole is car number 98, Bud Finale of Jamestown, New York, a 1957 Chevy. Next on the pole, car number 1, Marv Thorpe of Sugar Grove, PA, a 1956 Ford.
I had a brother that raced at Satan's Bowl of Death up the Big Tree Road, just a ways up the road from Stateline. That they run them little Model A Fords up there, and they went down through the creek and up over the bank and back. And I think this racing gets in your blood. Some days I feel like I could jump in one now, but no way. I started racing in 1948. Lloyd Williams and we had a Hudson Terraplane, and we raced in Leon, New York, and we raced down in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, and we went several tracks, and that old Hudson would just mow them down. I won an awful lot of races with that car. Well, it was after the race ended. I had that little 37 Ford Coupe, Russ Thompson and I pulled in and I backed up to the fence and shut it off and got out, and I was just walking past it, and the radiator hose blew off and got me right in the right side with that hot water out of that car. We got to talking about that hot water spraying that got Russ and I, both of us, and some guy asked Russ, they said, well, didn't you run? Russ says, I don't think I did, but I passed two guys that were.
At some point in the mid-50s, you decided to do something a little bit different. Get out of the car and pick up the flag sticks. What possessed you to do that?
Well, I was flagman up at Skyline, and I don't know, just because I was involved in racing, I guess they figured I knew which color flag to use and when, and so that worked out pretty good. And then when at Skyline, or Stateline, I did that there, and I would stand there and watch those guys run, and I think it's a little bit like being an alcoholic. You get that in your system, you can't get it out, and that's the way racing is, I believe. It was where the land was available. It needed a lot of work, but there was a lot of land that could be bought, and it's pretty hard to find a chunk of land with over 50 acres that you could use, and so we were lucky enough to be able to get that.
When you bought, how did you finance it?
Well, I told the guys, I said, well, I'll go to the bank and see what we can do. I went to the bank and talked to the president of the bank, and he said, you can have just about any amount of money you want. I said, well, I want all the guys to sign the note for the money, for the loan. And so he said, that's okay. So we did that. Jerry wasn't old enough to sign because of his age. So his dad...
Well, that's what he told you.
Yeah. His dad signed the papers for Jerry. Lloyd and Don went to New York to get the deed for the property, and they had the money to pay her.
Yeah.
Well, we had so many people helping, and people were up there helping for nothing. They'd bring their own tools, their own equipment. I had one cousin, he had a little old tractor, and he said, you guys can use that till you're done. And we did. Guard Chandler had that old tractor. It was a little one, a little farm one. Done a lot of work with it. And we pulled trees and everything up. Finally got the track laid out. The first guy around the track was Tony White. He came up there every day, every night he'd come up there on his horse. And the track was laid out, so he couldn't resist. He had to make a lap with that horse. So he was the first guy around the track.
What was your highlight?
Well, I won the 50 lapper there one time. That was kind of neat to do that, to get out front and stay there long enough to win the race. But otherwise, I'd raced a lot of those Australian pursuit races, and those guys always liked to put my Hudson last, and every car that I passed was out of the race. But one day there was about 25 cars in the race, and they started me last, and I went not quite 2 laps, and I had passed every car on the track, And the guys that owned the track says, don't do that no more. It's got to last longer.
In the run-up to tonight, there was some publicity in the Jamestown Post-Journal that showed your car. And I got to tell you, I can't find anything in the picture of this particular car where there's a straight piece of metal.
Well, there probably wasn't too many places because it seemed to get sandwiched in between a lot of cars.
Yeah, I don't know. Was this Russ, one of Russ Thompson's cars at the time?
Yeah. But one day, Russ and Frank Leffner were working on that back corner, and Leffner was under the car, and he reached out like this, and he said to Russ, hit it right there. And Russ did, but his finger was in the way. Lee Layfield always said, when we lined the cars up, he was always, of course, one of the last cars to be lined up. And he'd say, well, you're doing this to me again this week. And I'd say, well, let's wait till the race is over, see how you feel about it then. So when he'd win the race, I said to him, how'd you like that race? He said, it's pretty good.
Being a flagman, I know you were the one probably would have most knowledge of anybody who would have a quick trigger. Did you ever find yourself in the pits afterwards having to sort of involve yourself in breaking up a fight or avoiding fights?
Well, Floyd Finelli was a good friend of mine. And Floyd was hot-tempered. And he always told me, he says, my nickname was Mo. He said, Mo, if you catch me in a fight, come over and stop me. I said, Floyd, I'd love to do it, but I said, if I grabbed you by the shoulder and pull you back, you turn right around and swat me. He said, no, I won't. I'll never hit you. Never. One night I come in the pit, and here's Floyd with a young man. He had run into him, and Floyd had him right by the head, banging his head right against his own car. And people were just watching, and I ran and I grabbed Floyd, and I said, Floyd, you got to stop. He looked at me, and he quit right there. The fight was over. And I always told him afterward, I said, I figured I'd be laying on the ground before you quit.
All right, what's the question I should be asking you? When you were coming up here tonight and from Seneca and thinking about, gee, I hope he asked this question, what would it be?
Well, you could ask me if, what was the best partnership I ever had?
What's the best partnership you've ever had?
My little wife sits right over here. We've been married 60 years in September.
Oh. You were there at the beginning with Jerry and Don and Leonard and Lloyd, and we're just honored and privileged to have you with us tonight. We're honored. Ladies and gentlemen, Marv Thorpe.